Monsters appeared in this world thanks to the presence of magic. But along with them came powerful heroes tasked with fighting these creatures. Our protagonist commands the deadliest squad of hunters in existence, each member blessed with truly massive attributes. Yet their fate turned grim when they were betrayed by a false companion who served a cursed god. Now, together with the Demon King, Ba must seek revenge. With magic's rise, countless demons and their lairs appeared across the world. But humanity also awakened with special powers. Among them, the strongest group of all is the Legion of God, led by Ba, now in his 10th year as their commander. His mission, to cooperate with the supreme authority, the one who calls himself God, and eradicate the demons. The operation begins, and the squad strikes with overwhelming force. Bold, belonging to the assassin class, wields deadly electricity. With her incredible stats, this marks the 100th demon lair they've destroyed. Hang Lin, the team's mage, commands ice magic at level L, the highest rank. After finishing the lair, they even plan to take a short vacation. Luke Shun, the galactic conductor, manipulates gravity to strengthen his allies, boosting their speed and power. With this support, Ba grows even more unstoppable, striking down enemies with brutal force. Rising victorious, he brandishes a sword infused with holiness and nuclear energy. Together, they successfully defeat an SSS-level Demon King. Han sighs that the battle ended too quickly, while Bold promises to go find more enemies for Ba to enjoy. Lukian reminds them that the mission was dangerous, that's why they were sent, but even he admits it felt too easy, asking for Ba's opinion. Intelligence had warned that the enemy possessed a special ability, but before Ba can answer, he is suddenly interrupted by a hug from the assassin, her overwhelming attributes pressing against him. She reminds him they have a vacation coming up, teasing if the two of them will be alone. Ba calmly tells her they still have teammates to spend time with. The childlike mage laughs, saying, "Our boy doesn't understand women." But something feels wrong. Ba realizes someone is missing. Luke explains the last member is still cleaning up the mess. The assassin mutters he's always the slowest. Sure enough, the missing comrade approaches, carrying out the purification with his hands. The ability activates, yet in an instant, the mage's head is pierced through. Everyone freezes in shock. Sherlin's lifeless body collapses to the ground. Ba tries to move, but his body won't respond. The traitor calmly reveals the truth. Paralyzing powder had been mixed into their food for the past month. A divine ability now causes countless tendrils to sprout, wrapping around the squad. His mission is clear: to kill the strongest among them. The plants suppress defenses and render their victims unconscious. The squad can't comprehend what's happening. The traitor declares it is God's will that they be purified. The tendrils tighten, crushing their bodies as more lash out. Ba watches in helpless terror, unable to act, as his companions are struck down one by one. Through the agony, Ba demands to know why. Why betray them when they had done nothing wrong? What kind of god would order this? What right does he have? The traitor vanishes and reappears instantly, his hand piercing through Ba's chest. With a cold smile, he answers, "God doesn't need a reason." Bleeding from the wound, Ba gasps, asking if they weren't comrades after 10 years together like a family. But the traitor only sneers, saying his captain still doesn't understand. From the very beginning, God orchestrated everything. They were nothing but pawns on his chessboard. His betrayal had always been part of the plan. He only played the role to earn their trust. It had all been nothing more than an act. In truth, the traitor was disgusted by everything he had done with them. Finishing his speech, he struck his former captain in the head. With bodies scattered across the floor, the purification was complete. Now, at last, the traitor could enjoy his so-called vacation. But even with such devastating wounds, something strange began to happen to Ba. Energy surged through his body, sending spasms across his frame. In the next moment, he was taken somewhere else. Someone wanted to make a deal with him. Ba quickly realized he was no longer anywhere familiar. Chains bound his body, and his eyes could not see a thing until the owner of the voice revealed himself, leaving him stunned. It was Belid, the very Demon King they had just faced. The Demon King explained he would never be weak enough to truly die. This was his soul space, and the entire country of Ne was both his domain and his life. But he hadn't brought Ba here for small talk. He sensed within Ba the same hatred he carried. That is why he wanted to make a deal. His secret ability was called Life Reversal. With it, he could send Ba back to the past, giving him a chance to rewrite the future. Balid asked if Ba was interested in such an offer. In silence, Ba's mind flooded with memories of his companions, the good moments they had shared, until his thoughts ended with the image of the traitor and his merciless betrayal of the ones Ba called family. His rage boiled over. He wanted nothing more than to end the traitor's life. His hatred burned so intensely that the chains shattered. That fury wasn't only for the traitor, it was for the so-called god as well. The Demon King was pleased. This was the answer he had expected. Smiling, he agreed to help, materializing a beating heart in his hand. He called it Ba's welcome gift. Ba demanded to know why he had been chosen, and what price he would have to pay for this deal. But Balid only smiled as he handed him the heart. Right after, another voice cut through the darkness, begging Ba not to fall asleep. Slowly, he opened his eyes that a girl stood before him, urging him to get up. Ba was stunned. He had truly gone back to the past. He was standing in the Awaken school. Looking at his hands, he realized his body was younger, not yet awakened. He wasn't even wearing his uniform. The regression had actually worked. The teacher, clearly irritated, stood before him. Shaking her twin tails furiously, she scolded Ba for dozing off when he was supposed to undergo his profession change that very afternoon. Embarrassed, Ba felt intimidated. Being back in school after all those years, it had to be Balid's doing. But secretly, he thought it was amazing. He hadn't seen these classmates in over 20 years. Calling for everyone's attention, the teacher began the lesson. She explained that there are 5 elemental powers in the world: light, fire, cloud, center, and star. Each person can only possess one element. Demonstrating for them, she revealed her own rare attribute, the cloud element. She explained that when combined with the user's body, these elements divide into 3 categories: combat, specialist, and utility. These categories give rise to the many professions. She mentioned that the strongest team in the school consisted of a star mage, a warrior, a bard of the center, and a lightning assassin. The students were privileged to even be there, as they were prodigies among the gifted. But today was far more important than any lesson. There were more than 100 awakened professions, divided into 4 qualities: dust, firefly, abyss, and heaven's brilliance. And the truth of the matter was this: you could only awaken your profession once in your life. That afternoon, they would finally discover what theirs would be. The results would decide the course of their futures. Ba couldn't help but smile that he missed those days. This was the very moment when he first awakened. While walking, a boy with glasses was suddenly shoved to the ground by a group of jerks. They mocked him, calling him trash who needed help just to awaken. One of them even stepped on his hand, sneering that he was too full of himself just because he was about to awaken. In front of someone with a rare quality like him, the boy with glasses would always be useless. That jerk was a star assassin of Class E. Ba immediately remembered him. In the past, this guy was always stirring up trouble, constantly insulting others as if it were second nature. Just then, the teacher arrived, reprimanding the student and demanding to know if he was trying to steal money from his classmate. Acting innocent, the jerk claimed he had only bumped into the boy and that the money was just compensation for him and his friends. But then he leaned close and whispered in her ear that if she weren't pretty, he would have already been expelled long ago. She ignored his disgusting remark and instead helped the boy with glasses to his feet. The jerk and his companions turned to leave, only to find their path blocked by Ba. With a smirk, the jerk slapped Ba's shoulder, asking what he was staring at before shoving him aside and telling him to get out of the way. The boy with glasses quickly apologized to the teacher, insisting he had only been careless. Ba knew this teacher well. She had been kind to him in his past life and had helped him greatly during his awakening. Professor Huang truly was wonderful. Soon after, another teacher called out that it was time for her class to enter the awakening chamber. Guiding her students, she reminded them to remain as lucid as possible during the process to avoid injuries. In this world, awakening happens in 2 ways. The first is natural awakening, like with that arrogant star assassin. Usually, this occurs in people with talent and athletic builds, triggered in moments of strong emotion. The second method is through the spatial chamber, a marvel created from the knowledge of countless scientists. Inside, emotions are heightened, helping to stimulate the awakening process. However, every person can only awaken once in their life, and the results are completely random. The first of Professor Huang's students entered the chamber and awakened into a blue profession of the Firefly tier. That was the moment where one's path in life was set. Now it was Ba's turn. Professor Huang reminded him to stay focused and not behave as carelessly as he usually did in class. Ba confidently replied that he knew what he was doing. In his past life, he had awakened as a central warrior of Class E, a dust tier profession. Because of that, he was mocked and bullied relentlessly. But everything changed when he eventually rose to Class S and awakened a much rarer type of power. Now, Ba was certain there must be a core element inside him, and he was eager to see what profession he would gain this time. As he stepped into the chamber, his emotions began to surge. But suddenly, the awakening system detected an error. 5 elements had been found within his body. Ba froze, unable to understand what was happening, as a burning heat spread through him. The infinite awakening had begun. Because he possessed 5 elements, he now had the ability to activate any class of any element as his initial profession. As he gained experience in each element, he could either choose a random new class within that element or upgrade an existing one. Ba struggled to believe it. He could even reclaim the class he had once held in his past life, or branch into something entirely new. The system explained that he could eventually access special classes, but for now, he could only choose his first. The others would be determined randomly. Little by little, Ba recalled the heart given to him by the Demon King. That very heart had traveled back with him to the past, granting him the gift of infinite awakening. All that remained now was to choose his first class, and he already knew what direction to take. Outside the chamber, his classmates whispered among themselves, impatient that he was taking so long. When Ba finally stepped out, his teacher, with her ever-present grace and firm presence, immediately asked what class he had received. Ba, masking his excitement, apologized and explained that he had awakened as a central warrior, one of the weakest professions within the green quality tier. The teacher's expression softened with pity. She reminded him that many had started from humble beginnings yet still achieved greatness, and urged him not to lose hope. Ba, however, kept his composure and reassured her that he needed no sympathy. Recognizing his determination, she encouraged him to rest, noting how draining the awakening process could be. Their exchange was quickly interrupted by mocking laughter. One of the STAR's students ridiculed the teacher's optimism, calling it toxic. He claimed that effort alone would never change anything, and that those born weak would always remain weak. Both Ba and the teacher glared at him with disdain, but the boy only grew bolder. He argued that someone with a dust-quality awakening was already at the bottom of society's ladder, a place ordained by God himself. According to him, the weak existed only to be humiliated. Hearing this, Ba's anger flared. The mention of God only deepened his hatred, reminding him of the betrayal in his past life. The teacher tried to silence the arrogant student, but he pushed further. He mocked the system itself, explaining that dust-quality students were forced to sit at the back of the room, a mere reflection of society where the strong claimed resources and grew stronger while the weak withered away. He questioned whether Ba truly believed in the illusion of hard work, insisting that one's future was sealed at the moment of awakening. He even mocked the teacher herself, saying her Firefly-level awakening was the reason she had been relegated to a small school like theirs. Finally, he sneered that Ba should give up and go home to avoid wasting government resources. Ba's patience snapped. Without a word, he seized the student's drink and crushed it in his hand, splashing the liquid across the arrogant boy's face. For a moment, the bully stood frozen in disbelief before demanding to know if Ba understood the consequences of such an act. Ba, unshaken, simply met his gaze with cold contempt, silently making it clear he had no tolerance for such nonsense. The bully's lips curved into a cruel smile as he prepared to retaliate. He lunged forward, intent on striking Ba down. The teacher tried to intervene, but she was too far to stop what was about to happen. Yet, in that instant, the bully discovered that he was no more than a background character in someone else's story. His attack was effortlessly blocked. Panic replaced arrogance as he realized his strike had been neutralized with ease. But the humiliation didn't end there. Ba countered with a single, precise move that sent the boy's body hurtling through the air. The impact was brutal, and the arrogant student crashed down, coughing blood. All of it happened so quickly and so effortlessly that no one around could even explain how it had unfolded. Ba, expressionless and calm, stood unshaken while his opponent lay sprawled on the ground, reduced to nothing more than discarded trash. Realizing what had just occurred, the arrogant boy was struck with fear. What had happened should have been impossible, and he couldn't even comprehend how it had unfolded. The surrounding students were equally baffled, unable to make sense of what they had just witnessed. Ba, however, had no doubts he had chosen this class deliberately. Though considered weak, it granted him a basic light sword, along with 20 points in both attack and evasion. Already, he was beginning to feel comfortable with it. The bully, still reeling, tried to mask his humiliation by claiming that Ba's strike had been nothing but luck. He reminded everyone that he belonged to the Abyss tier, a place far above someone as insignificant as Ba. Yet the teacher, seasoned and knowledgeable, knew better. What Ba had just used was no accident. It was a highly exclusive warrior technique known as Ju. The skill allowed its user to absorb the force of a maximum attack and instantly redirect it back toward the attacker. It happened in the blink of an eye, leaving no chance for reaction. The teacher's own master had spent over a decade trying to perfect it, never quite succeeding. And yet, her student had just executed it casually, without even having real combat experience. The bully's pride burned hotter. Drawing his sword, he declared that he would show Ba the difference between those chosen by God and those abandoned by fate. With 30 points in both attack and speed, he was certain he would crush his opponent and prove his superiority. Ba, however, had his reasons for choosing what many considered a weak class. He understood that judging a person's destiny solely by the class they awakened into was a grave mistake, one that time would eventually reveal to all. With both of them now armed, the other students began to murmur nervously. Fighting with awakened powers on school grounds was strictly forbidden, and with so many witnesses, any consequences would be impossible to avoid. The bully, however, came from privilege. His father was an officer, and his uncle the school director. Ba, in contrast, had no such protections, coming from a poor background. If a fight broke out, everyone feared Ba would be the one punished. One timid student, racked with anxiety, whispered his worries to the teacher, fearing Ba might be expelled. But she was still too stunned by what she had seen to answer immediately. The move Ba had performed lingered in her mind, defying everything she thought she knew. Still, she stepped between them, warning them not to act recklessly, reminding them that they had just awakened and should not rush into danger. The bully, however, dismissed her. He insisted that Ba was the one who had provoked him, and even if Ba were to kneel and beg for forgiveness, it would not change his mind. In his eyes, there was an unbridgeable gap between those favored by God and the nobodies beneath them. And indeed, there was truth in the difference of attributes. Ba's green tier class provided a 100% bonus, a Firefly tier class granted 150%, but the Abyss tier, his opponent's domain, offered a staggering 200%. On paper, the power gap was undeniable. The teacher's heart tightened with worry, convinced Ba might truly be in danger. To her, the boy was outclassed in every possible way. The timid student, meanwhile, tried to understand why Ba had provoked someone so dangerous. To him, survival in society required caution, restraint, and humility. One must avoid conflict to endure, and when faced with overwhelming power, lowering oneself was the only way to keep living. Ba's choice to confront the bully seemed reckless, a path that could only end in further humiliation. But Ba thought differently. He did not flinch as the bully, consumed by rage, charged forward with full force. The teacher, her chest tightening with dread, braced herself for the worst. The teacher, her heart racing, was in a panic. She feared that Ba wouldn't be able to withstand another attack, especially after using a move that consumed so much stamina. To her, the boy stood no chance. But Ba never even considered dodging. He had no reason to. In his eyes, his opponent was laughably weak. With calm precision, he unleashed the impulse technique, a skill sharp enough to pierce through anything in his way. The arrogant boy's eyes widened in disbelief. Pain shot through his body before he could even register what had happened. The internal damage struck him hard, and he collapsed onto the ground, coughing blood. In that instant, the roles had reversed. The one who claimed superiority had been exposed as nothing more than trash. The watching students couldn't make sense of it. To them, It looked as if the bully had simply collapsed on his own. Some laughed at the absurdity of the scene, but the teacher could only stand frozen in shock. She hadn't even seen what Ba had done. At that moment, a new figure arrived. It was Chien, the class monitor, a sharp-eyed girl who had been watching closely. Unlike the others, she sensed the truth. Ba had just activated a rare warrior skill, Instant Step, but she suspected there was more to it. Somehow, he had used it not just for movement, but to inflict devastating damage on his opponent. To Chien, it was clear, Ba wielded his class abilities with ease far beyond a novice. The students murmured among themselves, acknowledging that the so-called prodigy had been utterly humiliated. Meanwhile, Ba quietly received confirmation of something far more important. His theory was right. Experience points came from real combat. Though the gain was small this time, he realized that to truly grow stronger, he would need to fight monsters. On the ground, the defeated boy struggled to rise, his pride driving him more than his strength. He swore vengeance, gripping his sword again, prepared to strike Ba down. But before he could act, a commanding voice cut through the tension. The bully froze, nearly trembling where he stood. The school principal had arrived. His presence alone silenced the chaos. Looking at his nephew with stern disappointment, he asked if the boy wasn't tired of humiliating himself. He reminded everyone that the day had been long, filled with awakenings, and it was time to rest. He instructed the students to head home and share their new classes with their families. Ba's heart clenched at those words. In this timeline, his family was still alive. He had nearly forgotten that truth. Without giving the principal a chance to speak further, he turned and ran. Something more important awaited him than listening to authority. The principal, visibly annoyed, watched him go. Turning to the teacher, he told her she needed to discipline her students better. Then, with a sigh, he promised to pretend nothing had happened that day. The teacher, still unsettled, apologized for the scene. Later, in the principal's office, the arrogant boy raged, insisting he would never lose to Ba again. But his uncle didn't share his confidence. The principal explained the truth. During that fight, his nephew had never stood a chance. Ba had used Instant Step, an advanced technique. Worse still, before activating it, he had struck directly at a vital weak point, all while his opponent was completely unguarded. That kind of mastery, using only basic skills, was astonishing. Even with 15 years of combat experience, the principal himself couldn't execute it with such precision. To him, the battle had been no duel at all. It was like watching a casual player stumble helplessly against a seasoned professional. Ba ran desperately through the streets, his heart pounding harder than his legs could carry him. Revenge no longer mattered. Something far more important awaited him. He knew what day it was. He knew what was about to happen, and he refused to let history repeat itself. Gasping for breath, he reached the home he thought he had lost forever. The memories of his past life pressed down on him, but determination burned hotter. Even if it cost his life, he would change what was coming. Inside, the small house looked as ordinary as ever. A man lounged on the couch, laughing loudly at a television program. In the kitchen, a woman washed the dishes with calm familiarity. For anyone else, it was just a normal day. But for Ba, it was a miracle. Stepping inside, he was greeted casually by the man on the couch, who commented on his early return. His mother, still by the sink, turned to glance at him, her eyes warm and tender. Ba's chest tightened. He could hardly believe it. She was alive. His mother was truly alive. He walked toward her, fighting the sting of tears. She smiled and, with gentle hands, signed to him that she had cooked his favorite dish, spicy noodles. To see her vibrant, moving, still caring for him, it felt like the heavens had given him another chance. But Ba remembered. He remembered everything. That day, she had gone out for fish, and tragedy followed. He tried to change it. He insisted she prepare fish instead, but she only shook her head playfully, signing that tomorrow she would. Ba pressed harder, determined to alter even the smallest detail. Relenting, she prepared to step out, ready to fetch what he wanted. He hurried to follow her, unwilling to let her leave alone. But then his father intervened. Without sparing Ba a glance, the man muttered that she could go alone, his attention fixed instead on his son. Something in his tone suggested suspicion. Something wasn't right. Rising from a couch, the man reminded Ba that today had been his awakening day. He expected news, and he expected to celebrate. A bottle of liquor was already in his hand, his mood volatile as always. Ba lied that he claimed he had missed the ceremony and hadn't awakened yet. His father's face twisted with scorn. To him, his son was a disappointment, especially compared to the neighbor's child who had awakened into a promising Firefly tier class. His words were harsh, comparing his son's worthlessness to his own youthful determination, how he had awakened without resources yet still refused to be trash. But Ba knew this man too well. He knew what came next. The question came sharp and accusing. What class had he awakened into? Ba tried to hold steady, but before he could answer, the bottle came crashing down on his head. The drunken warrior's suspicion grew darker. He muttered that perhaps his son was dust here, a useless fraud who pretended to lead at school, but revealed himself as worthless in truth. Ba's vision blurred, but memories struck harder than the blow. He remembered his father clearly, an awakened man, yes, but a violent one, consumed by his temper. In his past life, this moment had destroyed everything. His father's fury had not only fallen on him, but on his mother as well. She had tried to protect her son, only to endure an hour-long beating that left her with permanent damage. And Ba, he had been powerless, too weak to stop it, too weak to protect her. He had watched, broken and helpless, as the woman who loved him most suffered for his sake. The boy was once again enduring his father's violence. Despite his awakening, he knew he still wasn't strong enough to resist. His father, a class C awakened at the Mount Tier, had far more combat experience than anyone the boy had faced so far. Fighting back was not an option. As the beating continued, the boy realized his father would not stop until he gave him an answer about his awakening. This was why he had tried so hard to send his mother out of the house, hoping she would not be caught in the middle of it. But his plans quickly collapsed. In the middle of the struggle, he heard the sound of grocery bags hitting the floor. His mother had returned sooner than expected, and in those bags was the fish he had asked her to buy. She must have hurried, wanting to prepare the meal for him, but in doing so, she walked straight into the scene of her son being beaten. His father, seeing her enter, cursed her for giving birth to what he called a useless child. Elsewhere, in a prison cell, someone spoke about the boy's future. The discussion revolved around how he was the first to achieve evolution within the green class, and how unusual it was for someone from a supposedly weak class to rise so high. The prisoner questioned why such potential was locked away in this place, since only the worst criminals were kept there. The boy himself explained that he was there because he killed the man who had beaten his mother to death. Returning to that moment in the house, the boy understood he had no choice but to act. He couldn't let his mother suffer the same fate again. He tried to attack his father, but the effort was easily stopped. Even without relying on special abilities, an awakened fighter like his father was far stronger than a regular person. His mother rushed forward, tried to shield him. She attempted to speak, but her inability to use her voice left her struggling to express herself. His father locked the door, ensuring no one would leave. He then began to rant about his frustrations. He recalled the joy he had felt when learning that his wife was pregnant with a son, believing that moment would mark the turning point in their family's history. He spoke of the pride his brothers carried for having sons and of his own determination to bring honor to their ancestors. But seeing his son awaken into what he considered the weakest possible class filled him with rage. He blamed his wife for passing on what he believed were worthless genes. His anger turned violent, and he picked up a chair, preparing to strike her with it at full force. Before the chair could strike, the boy activated Instant Step, appearing in front of his mother and blocking the attack. His father froze for a moment, surprised that his strike had been stopped. The boy now held his sword, warning his father not to touch his mother again. A small cut on his clothing showed just how close the attack had come. His father, however, only found this more interesting. To him, his son had simply grown stronger, but it wasn't enough to change anything. The boy's mother, unable to speak, grew even more anxious, watching the scene unfold without any way to intervene. Prepared for another round, the boy positioned himself carefully, but his father's speed was overwhelming. The first strike shattered the boy's armor, exploiting a weakness in his defense. The difference in raw strength was also immense. Pain surged through the boy's ribs, nearly breaking them. He tried blocking with his hands, but the blows kept coming. His father considered this nothing more than punishment for a defiant son. The mother could only watch in despair, while the father treated it as if he were disciplining his child. The boy refused to dodge, knowing his mother stood behind him, vulnerable if he stepped aside. His father mocked his weak class, insisting that someone like him deserved death. Determined not to let the same tragedy happen again, the boy stood firm. The father then raised a chair with both hands, preparing to strike once more. But a sudden knock at the door interrupted him. Annoyed, he demanded to know who was disturbing him at such a time. Opening the door, he was met by two men dressed as police officers. They asked why it had taken him so long to answer. Clearly nervous, he tried to hide his discomfort, asking why they were there. The officers explained they were investigating reports of a dangerous fugitive in the area and checking each home. Before the man could say more, one of the officers noticed the boy inside the house, bleeding and being tended to by his mother. Suspicious, the officer asked what had happened. The father quickly claimed his son had simply fallen, but the boy immediately contradicted him, stating that he had been beaten. His father's expression darkened at the accusation, realizing his son no longer feared him. Unbeknownst to his father, the boy had already spoken with inspectors 18 minutes earlier, reporting the presence of a suspicious person in the area. That was what had brought the officers to his door. When asked again, the father tried to make light of the matter, joking that his son was training to be a comedian. But the boy pressed forward, stating clearly that he had been hit multiple times with both a chair and a bottle. He even cited the law concerning awakened individuals. Those who displayed violent tendencies were required to be detained for 15 days. The officers recognized the accuracy of his words and understood that the situation was serious. This only made his father more furious. To the officers, it was enough. They moved to detain the man. Enraged, the father reacted violently and lunged at his son once again. The inspectors restrained him immediately, dragging him out of the house by force. Thanks to their intervention, Bai was able to prevent his mother from being hurt. He turned back, still worried, only to be pulled into a tight embrace. She couldn't say a word, but her relief spoke for her. Bai promised her that this would be the last time something like this happened. With his father gone for 15 days, he had time to prepare. The beating he endured wasn't meaningless either. He had managed to snatch a key his father always carried. He knew exactly what it opened. In a small locked room, his father had kept a safe hidden, a secret Bai only discovered in his past life after his father had already left for the Ice Sky Express. Inside, it was an artifact, one capable of fighting demons. With it, Bai could grow stronger. Dungeons controlled by the followers of God were out of his reach. Only those managed by the Academy were accessible. But he also remembered the existence of a hidden dungeon, one nobody else knew about yet. That would be his starting point. Meanwhile, at the station, the inspectors reported back. They realized the emergency call had been a false alarm. Though they had even dispatched the captain, all they found was Bai's father. Still, they remained on guard. The fugitive they were searching for, known by the alias Snow, was no small threat. Inside his cell, Bai's father quickly shifted from anger to pleading. He begged for mercy, saying this was the first time he had ever beaten a child and promised to be more discreet next time. He even tried to bribe the inspectors by claiming he had friends experienced in childcare, hinting that they could help the vice captain's newborn. One inspector was disgusted, asking if that was really supposed to be a bribe. If so, he had just bought himself a ticket to a much less pleasant session at the station. Worse, the inspector knew of his background as a guild member. Seeing someone with that past reduced to such a pitiful state was almost shameful. Another officer advised him to keep quiet, warning that if word of his attempted bribe spread, some harsher cop would make sure his stay was unforgettable. They told him to rest. He'd be transferred to prison the next day. As soon as the room emptied, anger filled him again. In his mind, there was only one person to blame for his arrest, his son. Taking no responsibility for his actions, he convinced himself everything had happened because Bai couldn't take a beating. That night, while his mother finally slept in peace, Bai stayed awake, thinking. He had 15 days. That was all the time he had to grow stronger. He left his room quietly, heading toward the only option available, the demon nests. These unpredictable rifts could appear anywhere. Guilds usually claimed them quickly because of the resources they produced, useful both for combat and for trade. Bai remembered this particular nest well. In his past life, it had gone unnoticed for 5 years until the demons inside grew strong enough to spill into the world. By then, it was too late. Normally, an F-level dungeon required at least 3 competent E-tier warriors. An E-level one demanded a team of 5, with 3 members at the right level. But since this one had only just appeared, it was almost certainly F-tier. Dangerous, but manageable for him. He approached the entrance carefully. Even from outside, he could feel the heavy air pressing against his skin. Ideally, Bai would have entered the dungeon with others, since teamwork greatly increased the odds of survival. But he had no choice. If he didn't grow stronger quickly, his father would return and nothing would change. The system confirmed his entry into the demon den, but the danger level was still unknown. Almost immediately, he noticed the entire region was blanketed in ice, a condition that could complicate combat. As he pressed deeper into the frozen landscape, he found something unusual. A large creature slept in the distance, surrounded by skeletons. Clearly, someone had already entered this place and failed to make it back out. Bai recognized the creature. It was E-level. While he considered his next move, faint footsteps echoed in the icy chamber. Instantly, he shifted into a defensive stance, eyes fixed on the direction of the sound. An enraged wolf burst from the shadows, teeth bared and ready to strike. Bai reacted instinctively, vanishing from its path with a sudden burst of speed. The wolf's jaws snapped shut on empty air, and in its second attempt, it clamped down on Bai's sword instead. Bai's counterstrike knocked it back, though surprisingly the beast's fangs remained unbroken. The wolf circled him again, its fury only growing. Bai tightened his grip on his weapon. With practiced precision, he slashed cleanly through the beast, leaving its lifeless body behind. His sword, an A-grade weapon once hidden away in his father's safe, cut through the creature as if it were nothing. Weapons of that caliber were forbidden from being sold openly, which explained why his father had kept it so well guarded. After the fight, Bai paused, releasing a long breath. For a brief moment, he remembered his past life, when he was powerful enough that battles like this were nothing more than routine. Strength had made life simple then, almost too simple. Now, every fight meant something. Checking his stats, he realized the truth. He would need to defeat countless creatures if he wanted to level up. Fortunately, he wouldn't need to wait long for the opportunity. The scent of blood had already drawn more wolves. Several emerged from the shadows, their eyes fixed on him with murderous intent. Surrounded, Bai studied them calmly. Judging from his expression, the outcome was already decided. One way or another, he would not leave this dungeon empty-handed.